In the Sixth Patriarch Sutra, we read about Vishupata, who had recited the Dharma Flower Sutra over 3,000 times and consequently became arrogant. He went to meet the Sixth Patriarch, the great Master Huineng. When those who have left home life meet the abbot of a monastery, they should make obeisance very respectfully, dressed in full robes and carrying their sitting cloth. However, Fata's 3,000 sutra recitations got in his way, so that when he bowed, his head didn't touch the ground. The sixth patriarch said, "No doubt there is something on your mind. What do you practice?" Father was rather blunt in his reply and said proudly, "I have recited the Dharma Flower Sutra over 3,000 times." "Really?" said the sixth patriarch. "I don't care if you have recited it 10,000 times. If you understood the sutra's meaning, you ought not be so arrogant." Then he spoke a verse. As bowing is basically to subdue arrogance, why didn't your head touch the ground? The mind confused, the Dharma flower turns it. The enlightened mind turns the Dharma flower. Reciting the sutra so long without understanding it has put you at odds with its meaning. The Chinese word for turn also means recite. When you are unclear, although you recite the sutra, you are turned by it. If you understand, you can truly recite, that is, turn the sutra. Turning the sutra is a wonderful drama. Turning the sutra is the wonderful aspect of the unwonderful. Being turned by the sutra is the unwonderful aspect of the wonderful. If you have recited the sutra 3,000 times but do not understand it, you become the sutra's enemy. Originally, your heart and the sutra were one, but now they are divided because you keep thinking, "I have recited the sutra over 3,000 times. I have married." In this way, an obstruction is created. Not understanding the sutra's principles, you have been unable to rid yourself of arrogance. So, no matter who you are, if you accumulate merit, do not become arrogant about it. Students of the Buddha Dharma must be humble and courteous towards everyone and never be proud or arrogant. I hope that everyone will take note of this point and not just let it go in one ear and out the other. The lotus flower. The concept of the wonderful drama is extremely broad and one could never finish speaking of it. So for now, we will move on with the discussion of the title of the sutra and discuss the next two words, lotus flower. The lotus is a most rare flower. It blooms and bears fruit at the same time. When the lotus blooms, the lotus seeds appear. The lotus takes root in the mud and its stem grows up through the water. The flower is neither in the mud nor the water, but blooms above the surface of the water. The root in the mud represents common people. The stem in the water represents those of the two vehicles. Common people are attached to existence. The mud is an analogy for existence. Those of the two vehicles are attached to emptiness. The stem in the water represents emptiness. The lotus flower, which blooms above the water, represents the transcendence of emptiness and existence and represents the absolute principle of the middle way, in which there is neither falling into emptiness nor going to the extreme of existence. Emptiness and existence are the two extremes. To be unattached to either of the two extremes is the absolute principle of the middle way. Why do we say that the lotus flower represents the absolute principle of the middle way, the great teaching, perfect and sudden. We say this because the lotus flowers blooming and bearing fruit simultaneously represents the non-duality of cause and effect. As a cause of thus is the effect. If the cause planted is one of Buddhahood, the effect will be one of Buddhahood. The lotus blooming and bearing fruit simultaneously also represents the opening of the provisional to manifest the real. The blooming of the lotus represents the opening of the provisional Dharma. The lotus seeds which are revealed when the lotus blooms represent the real Dharma. Provisional Dharma refers to expedient devices, and real Dharma is the genuine, not false Dharma, the principle of the real mark. Why did the Buddha appear in the world? It was for the sake of teaching all living beings to become enlightened. The Buddha appeared in the world because of the problem of living beings' birth and death. So the sutra says, the Buddha appeared in the world for the reason of the one great matter. The great matter is the problem of living beings' birth and death. But someone might object, everyone is born and dies. Birth and death is the most democratic event in heaven and earth. Why make such an issue of it? That's a good question. However, although everyone is born and dies, birth and death, death and rebirth, death and rebirth again, ultimately, what use is it? Ultimately, what advantage does it have? Chuang Tzu spoke with sound principle when he said, my life has a limit, but knowledge is unlimited. To pursue the unlimited with that which is limited is dangerous indeed. He said, my life has a limit, but knowledge has no end. To study endless knowledge with one's finite life is futile. It cannot be done. However, Chuang Tzu only knew half the story. He didn't see the full picture. He knew that life has an end, but he didn't know that when it is over, there is rebirth and another beginning. When one life ends, another begins. This is like previously the toll collectors on the Golden Gate Bridge used to collect from the cars as they came and went. Only later did they realize that anyone who left the city was likely to return and that they could save time and energy by simply doubling the toll and collecting only from incoming traffic. Chuang Tzu understood the road out, but not the road back. Human life is a round trip affair. When you leave, you always return. If you understand how you were born, you will be able to understand the problem of death. If you do not understand how you were born, you will not understand the problem of death. Coming, you will be muddled. Going, you will be muddled. Coming, you will not understand. Going, you will not understand. In the Confucian Analects, we read, Tzu Lu asked about how to serve ghosts and spirits. The master said, until you know how to serve people, how can you serve ghosts? Tzu Lu then dared to ask a question about the dead, and the master replied, until you know about the living, how can you know about the dead? Tzu Lu said, I realize I'm being rather bold, but may I ask about the method for dying? What is the flavor of death? What is it like? Actually, Tzu Lu was just trying to make trouble. Confucius hadn't died yet, and why ask him about death? No doubt Confucius was rather old and certainly afraid of death, so he said, if you don't know how to live, how can you know how to die? Confucius lived to be very old, but this proves that he was afraid of death and still retained the mark of a lifespan. What he meant by his answer was, however you were born, that is how you will die. Then you ask, how are we born? Now we will get down to the basic problem, and everyone should pay close attention. People are born because of emotion and sexual desire, and they die because of emotion and sexual desire. If you have no emotion or sexual desire, then you do not undergo birth or death. Therefore, the problem of birth and death arises because of thoughts of sexual desire. If you sever thoughts of sexual desire, you will then end birth and death. However, Tzu Lu didn't understand the problem, and Confucius didn't answer him in terms of the problem. He just skirted the issue. But I will tell all of you now that birth and death is a very important problem. The Buddha appeared in the world simply because of the problem of living beings' birth and death. You can't take it with you. Once there was a fabulously wealthy old man who had a beautiful wife and three fine, intelligent sons. But from the time this man was born, he didn't pay any attention to anything but money. He ignored his father, his mother, and his brothers and sisters. The only thing he didn't ignore was money. He knew money like the back of his hand. It was his best friend and closest relative. He even wrote a verse about it. What heaven has conferred is called money. According to this money, it is called money. Money, may not be left for a moment. Actually, this is a rather perverted takeoff on the first chapter of the Chinese classic, The Doctrine of the Mean, which reads, that which has been conferred by heaven is called the nature. According with the nature is called the path. The path may not be left for a moment. He named his oldest son Gold. His second son he named Silver. He decided to give his third son an unusual name and called him Comic Obstacle. When this third son had grown up and he was old, he got sick. He was completely bedridden and couldn't walk. Although he was very rich after he had been sick for some time, no one looked after him. His beautiful wife kept her distance, and his intelligent sons never came to visit him. He gritted his teeth and thought, I hope I hurry up and die. But being dead alone in King Yama's den will be very lonely. I should take someone with me. He called for his wife and said, I'm not going to recover from this lingering illness. I hope to die soon. Won't you go with me? How can you ask a thing like that? He said. Nobody can die for anyone else. How could you expect me to want to go along with you? Are you sure you haven't lost your marbles? So the old man called his eldest son. Gold, he said, I have always loved you the most. Did you know that? Yes, father, said his son, I know you love me the most. Well, son, now I'm going to die. Would you go along with me? You old blockhead, came the reply. You are an old man, I'm young. How can you ask me to do something like that? And you claim to be fond of me? If you were, you wouldn't ask me to die with you. And he ran off. Then the old man spoke to his second son. Silver, won't you die with me? You're really messed up, said his son. How can you expect me to die just because you're dying? There was nothing the man could do but call for his youngest son, Comic Obstacle. You are the youngest, he said. I love you the most. I could die, but I can't bear to part with you. What am I going to do? He didn't dare ask outright for his son to go with him, but the boy caught on right away. If you love me so much, I'll go with you, said his son. The old man was delighted. You haven't let me down, he said. I always liked you best, and now I know you are my most filial son. So his pretty wife didn't go with him, and his sons gold and silver wouldn't go. The only one who went with his father to hell was his young son, Karmic Obstacle. So it is said, you can't take your gold and silver with you on your dying day, but your karmic obstacles stick with you all the way. To be born in the blissful land, merely recite Amitabha's name. Just recite Namo Amitabha Buddha to be reborn in the land of ultimate bliss and be freed of the suffering of the turning wheel of rebirth. Besides, if you want to get rich, the land of ultimate bliss is covered with gold. No paupers are there. If the old man had woken up and recited Namo Amitabha Buddha, he could have taken his sons' gold and silver with him, and he wouldn't been so lonely. He wouldn't have been so lonely. This story should serve to warn us to use every last bit of strength we have to do good deeds. Don't wait until you have no strength, until your dying breath, because then it will be too late. On the basis of the good roots we have planted in former lives, He should nurture our blessings and wisdom in this present life. There are many different kinds of flowers. Some flowers bloom but bear no fruit. They are like people who talk big but don't act on their words. They might say they are going to build a Buddha image, for example, but they never do it. This is called a sterile bloom. Such barren flowers represent non-Buddhist religions which appear to be very popular. They cultivate pure conduct and various types of asceticism, but they bear no fruit, no accomplishment. They are like the flowers which bear no fruit. Other flowers bear many fruits from a single bloom. This represents common people who practice many kinds of filial conduct. By serving and making offerings to their parents, teachers, and elders, they create much merit, and in the future they will be reborn among people as noble, wealthy folk. This is called one flower with many fruits. Other flowers have many flowers but only one fruit. This represents the vehicle of the south hearers, who cultivate many types of asceticism but obtain only the nirvana with the residue. This is called many flowers but one fruit. Other flowers have one bloom and one fruit. This represents the conditioned enlightened ones. They practice living in solitude deep in the mountains away from the bustle of human life. Through their cultivation of this one practice, they obtain the position of conditioned enlightened ones. Other flowers may be said to the first bear fruit and then bloom. This represents those who have obtained the first fruit of Ahatship, the stream winners, who still have cultivation ahead of them. Some flowers first bloom and then bear fruit. This represents the Bodhisattva vehicle. The Bodhisattvas first cultivate and then obtain the position of Bodhisattvahood. However, the various flowers listed above cannot be used when speaking of the wonderful Dharma. Only the lotus can be used as an analogy for the wonderful Dharma because it blooms and bears fruits at the same time. This represents the identity of the real and the provisional. The bloom represents the provisional Dharma and the fruit represents the real Dharma. However, the provisional Dharma is just the real Dharma. It is said, the provisional manifests for the sake of the real. Why does the flower bloom? For the sake of the fruit. Thus, the The Buddha spoke the Agama, Vaipulya, and Prana Sutras in preparation for speaking the Dharma Flower Sutra. The Dharmas taught prior to this were provisional, not real. In the Dharma Flower Assembly, the real Dharma was taught, the real teaching, the provisional was opened to manifest the real. The preceding teachings were dispensed with, and the real Dharma was made manifest. This is what is meant by the flower blooms and the seeds appear. As soon as the flower blooms, the lotus seeds appear. This represents the opening of the provisional to manifest the actual.